Looking for a new mobile phone contract in Switzerland but don't know where to start? In this video, I will tell you what to look for in a mobile phone contract and how I chose the one that I have now. I've divided the video in 3 parts. In part 1, I'll cover the basics on Swiss mobile network and the different operators. In part 2, I will dive deeper in the characteristics that are relevant when choosing your contract. And in part 3, I'll walk you through the criteria how I chose the phone contract for myself. And if you stay until the end, I will share a few bonus tips that can save you money when choosing your phone contract. At this point, I also mention that this video is not sponsored by anyone. Part 1. How does the phone operators work in Switzerland? Switzerland has 3 carriers who are operating their own physical networks. That is, owning the actual infrastructure, for example the cell towers, that allow you to make the phone calls or use the internet on your phone. These operators are Swisscom, Salt, and Sunrise. Besides these 3 operators, there are many so-called MVNOs, or Mobile Virtual Network Operators. These are operators who don't actually own the physical infrastructure, but are rather using one of the 3 mentioned earlier. In Switzerland, there's at least 16 of this kind of operators, and I'll list them here on the screen if you want to Google them while you're doing your research. But does it matter to you if your operator is owning the network or just operating in one owned by someone else? The answer is not really. But what might matter is which one of the 3 networks your operator is using. But I'll come back to that in the part 3. Part 2, and the phone contracts and what you should look into those ones. When it comes to the contract types, the story gets a little bit more complicated. I will cover here the contract duration, notice period, starting fees, SIM cards, roaming, add-on offers, and the pricing in general. Let's start by the contract duration. The minimum contract duration usually varies from up to 2 years to contracts that you can cancel at any time. The operators tend to be rather sneaky when advertising the pricing for their 2-year contracts. They often have a reduced price for the first year, which they are highly promoting, but then have a small comment that in order for you to get this price, you need to sign up for 2 years. And the second year is usually much higher priced. So if you don't pay attention, you may end up locked up in a contract that was not as good as you first thought. Also, once you are canceling or switching the contract, know that there is often up to 60 days notice period. And this applies also for the contracts that you can cancel anytime. The notice period as such shouldn't be a problem, but just something to take into account when switching contracts. As annoying as it often is, most of the operators in Switzerland are charging an activation fee for the new contracts. And these fees might vary often from 40 to 60 francs. Though the good news is that many operators nowadays are waiving this fee if you are ordering your contract online. And even for the ones that don't waive this fee, there may be solutions to get around it. In the bonus section at the end, I will share how I didn't have to pay the activation fee despite the operator not waiving it automatically. Regarding the SIM cards, most of the operators give you a choice between the normal physical SIM card or an eSIM. eSIM you can usually activate right away, and for the physical SIM card you may need to wait for a day or 2 to receive it via mail. Additionally, some operators, like Swisscom that I've tried, have deals with local kiosks allowing you to go and pick up your own physical SIM card right after your online order. Basically what you do is you order online your contract and receive a confirmation email. With this email, you'll go to whatever kiosk is open and closest to you, and they activate and give you your new physical SIM card right there on the spot. I have used this once, and I received the physical SIM card within an hour or so after making my order online. When it comes to choosing between the physical and eSIM, there is no real difference between the 2. Physical SIM card might be useful for you if you are often switching the SIM card from one phone to another, or if you have an older phone that doesn't yet support an eSIM. Now I have provided some basic information. It is time for the trickier part of the comparing the different contracts, which is roaming. For those who are not familiar with the term roaming, in practice this means using your phone abroad. As Switzerland is not part of the EU or European Economic Area, the EU rules for roaming don't apply to Switzerland. Based on the EU roaming rules, you could use a phone from any member country in any other country at no additional costs compared to your original contract. But this is not the case in Switzerland. If I would use my Finnish phone contract here in Switzerland, the following month I would be faced with a really high phone bill. So how does the roaming work for the Swiss contracts? I've divided in 2 different sections, the data roaming and the normal phone calls. The data roaming is rather straightforward. Basically, when the operator advertises that you have X amount of data abroad, you know that this is how much data you can use, and here's the list of countries that you can use it in. Simple. The tricky part are the phone calls, because you need to look from 4 different perspectives. Calls from Switzerland to abroad, calls from abroad to Switzerland, calls within the same country abroad, or calls from country A to country B abroad. If you are regularly traveling around Europe and need to make calls from one country to another, this is where you need to pay extra attention. Many operators advertise some level of roaming included, especially with their higher-end contracts. But as a surprise to me, this was often limited to calls within the country you visited and back to Switzerland. If I wanted to make a phone call from Switzerland to abroad, or a country where I was staying to another country, this would not be included. So you really need to read the small print to make sure it is exactly the way you need it to be. Here is an example from Sunrise how the different call types are included in different offers. You can see that the medium offer only includes call in Switzerland, large offer includes calls abroad and back to Switzerland, but only the top offer also offers the calls from Switzerland to abroad. When it comes to roaming, on the other hand, you could argue the relevance of roaming these days, as most of the calls can be done via internet, for example using FaceTime or WhatsApp, so in reality you might not be doing normal calls at all. Then a short word on the potential add-on offers the operators might provide. These might seem lucrative, as I've seen some of the operators offer free AirPods Pros or phones included for free when you get the contract. However, many times with these contracts you're locking yourself up for a longer period and the prices are usually not too low. Therefore, my recommendation is to ask yourself, would you really get the additional product if you had to pay for it in cash? And I would also compare how much the alternative contract plus buying the product outright would actually cost versus the bundle offer. And before we jump to how I chose my phone contract, we need to touch upon the pricing of the contracts. The pricing of the contracts varies highly in Switzerland. The most expensive contracts may cost all the way up to 200 francs per month. This would include pretty much everything almost all around the world. In comparison, more normal contracts that might include unlimited data and phone calls but only in Switzerland, you might be able to find these ones even below 20 francs per month. As a rule of thumb, the operators owning the networks, that is Swisscom, Salt and Sunrise, are rarely the cheapest options. Most of the time you find the best offers from MVNOs like Yallo, Wingo, TalkTalk or Das Abo. Also, it is important to keep in mind that most of the operators are constantly running some kind of seasonal discounts. These are something that I would highly recommend to keep eye on, as you might be able to get a really good contract with a reasonable price. And this is what takes us to the part 3, or how did I choose my phone contract? Choosing the contract and what works for you depends highly on your personal needs and requirements. In this part, I'm going to run you through the thought process I had when I chose my phone contract. One could describe my phone usage data heavy. Most of my phone usage is surfing internet, watching YouTube videos, or using different apps. I barely make any normal phone calls or send text messages, as majority of the calls I make are over FaceTime or WhatsApp. I also regularly travel outside Switzerland and have people around Europe with whom I need to be in touch with. Therefore, my number one criterion was that I need to have unlimited data usage in Switzerland and enough data for abroad. For abroad, this would mean that I would be able to spend a couple weeks abroad in one go and not run out of internet. So basically we're talking about unlimited data. Also, as not all the places in Europe have the same kind of good internet coverage as Switzerland has, I also considered it important to be able to make normal phone calls within Europe. And as the end result, I end up looking for a contract that had unlimited everything both in Switzerland and in Europe. And then my last criteria choosing my phone relates to my earlier comment on the different networks. There are some differences between the 3 networks Swisscom, Salt and Sunrise, and it's mainly in their coverage area. When you are in the cities, there is no real difference between the operators. But if you are going more regularly out in the mountains, the network starts to matter more. Here is a comparison of the Swisscom, Sunrise and Salt coverage with 4G connections. As you can see, the Swisscom has the best coverage the more remote places you go. If you're spending more time in the mountains away from the cities, and especially if you have a need for a high-speed 5G internet connection while being there, difference in coverage between Swisscom and the others become even more clear when looking at the 5G maps. This is why I wanted my operator to use Swisscom's network. The one contract that fulfilled my criteria was Wingo International. This offered unlimited everything in Europe, USA and few other countries. And it was operated in Swisscom's network. Now the normal price for this contract is really high, 130 francs per month. But as it was around Black Friday, I was able to find an offer for 45 francs per month. Still not extremely cheap, but for the value what you get, I consider this one a really good offer. Unfortunately, this offer is not available at the time of making this video, but this shows the power of seasonal discounts. And as I check the current offers while making the video, there are other similar offers available from different operators. So my general recommendation for choosing the phone contract in Switzerland is the following. Decide what you actually need, and then keep an eye on the seasonal discounts, because this way you will get most bang for your buck. And as I promised in the beginning, now it's time for the bonus part. I have 4 bonus tips for you that can save you money. Number 1, and this is probably something that I should have put as the first thing in the video, so you most likely could have stopped right away there. It is the absolutely cheapest way to have a phone contract in Switzerland. And it starts with a question. Does your employer provide you a phone? When I came to Switzerland, my employer provided me a phone, and it was all that I was using for the first 4 years in the country. So practically my phone bill was 0 over those years. So before you get any contract, check if your employer provides you one. Number 2, if your phone supports dual SIM, you could combine 2 contracts to cover your needs. This works, for example, with phones like iPhone XR or newer. If you already have a good phone contract from your home country, but don't have, for example, mobile data in Switzerland, you could just get an additional data SIM. You would then activate that as your mobile data plan, but use the old SIM for everything else. And third tip, if you can't get around the activation fee right away, there may still be a way around it. And this is what I had with Wingo. When I decided that Wingo is the phone contract I'm going to go with, I was faced with a 40 franc activation fee. I did not want to pay for this one, so I started looking around in the internet and stumbled upon a comparison website called allow.ch. I found out that if I would sign up through their website, I did not have to pay the activation fee. Allow itself is a comparison portal, but I would not consider it highly comprehensive, as they don't have all the providers in Switzerland. Therefore, I would rather do my research through other channels, and after that check if Allow would have some offers available that would allow me to get away from the activation fee, or potentially providing even some other benefits. And then the last tip. This is not so much saving money, but rather giving you optionality on your phone number. Signing up for the contract with Wingo would not have allowed me to choose my own phone number, but I was able to find a way that allowed me to choose my number and have the Wingo contract. For this one, I had to go through some extra hoops. I first opened a prepaid contract with Swisscom, because with them I was able to choose the number from few alternatives. Then I opened the Wingo contract through Allow, and chose an alternative to move my existing number for the contract. Existing number being the prepaid I just opened a few hours earlier. This trick costed me maybe 20 francs as unused prepaid credit. But in return, I got to select my number from few alternatives instead of getting whatever was randomly assigned to me. I hope this video provided you some valuable information to help you choose your next phone contract in Switzerland. If you are interested in similar kind of content, go check out my other videos, for example this one on the best bank account in Switzerland. Ciao!